Welcome. Thank you for joining me for this edition of Austin Prep Presents, our virtual series where we cover a wide variety of topics to engage and entertain our community. I am Jennifer Hodgson, the Director of Alumni Relations and Giving at Austin Prep. St. Augustine said, "The world is a book, and those who do not travel read only a page." Today, we will be presenting From Willow Street to the World, where we will hear about how Austin Prep students and faculty have the opportunity to participate in a number of travel experiences in the United States and abroad that deepen lessons learned in books and in the classroom. With the help of our presenters, we journey beyond the Austin Prep campus to places such as Peru, Ecuador, and the United Kingdom through our service learning and study abroad programs. We are joined by alumni Pedro Castro from the class of 2017, Matthew Debol from the class of 2020, and our head of middle school, Mclaughlin. I invite each of you to say hello.
Hi everyone, my name is Pedro Castro, and as Jen mentioned, I graduated from Austin Prep in 2017. I'm originally from Stoneham, Massachusetts, but right now I'm coming at you from my dorm in Dartmouth at Dartmouth College. I'm studying neuroscience and global health on the pre-med track.
My name is Matthew Debol. I graduated Austin Prep this year in 2020, and I am originally from Melrose, Massachusetts. Right now, I attend the University of Vermont, and I am planning in double majoring in global studies and Spanish.
Thank you, Matthew.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Mclaughlin, and I'm the head of middle school here at Austin Prep. I'm in the start of my 6th year here at Austin and my 15th year as a teacher and administrator. And beyond Austin, in the world of travel and education, I've been lucky enough over the last several years to work with the Independent Schools Cultural Alliance out of the United Kingdom. And I facilitate programming for a cohort of teachers from Peru, Brazil, Argentina, the US, and Australia when overseas in London. And I lead tours and talks and programs for their students over there. Austin Prep has been able to participate in that program several times. And I also am a freelance travel writer and have a number of pieces on domestic travel with Group 4 Media. And this year I took the lead on their international features, and they asked for me to highlight Austin Prep's programs in Australia, New Zealand, Rome, and London. So excited to share the stories of Austin Prep through the magazine, but really excited this afternoon to explore some of those stories with Matt and Pedro and all of you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining me, gentlemen. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Matt, Pedro, and Michael, and we're going to take a closer look at how Austin Prep has taken Veritas, Unitas, and Caritas beyond Willow Street in Reading, Massachusetts.
Michael, I had the opportunity to travel with Austin Prep in 2016 with a school service trip to Peru. You mentioned a few other programs. Could you talk about where Austin Prep students have stamped their passports for the past 5 years?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I'd start with our domestic travel. We have our grade level capstones that we take. Our 8th graders travel down to Washington, D.C. We have our Disney trip for seniors. The junior class spends a weekend in New York City. And we've also recently taken a group of Spanish students to Puerto Rico for a language immersion program. Internationally, over the last 5 years, we've done a whole host of trips. We took a 2-week cruise on the Greek Isles. We took a classics-focused trip to Rome in southern Italy, a 2-week trip to New Zealand and Australia, a city stay in Paris, which was an opportunity for French immersion. And we've done service trips to Peru, Panama, Costa Rica, and Ecuador. At the start of this year, our choir took a pilgrimage trip to the Vatican City at Christmas and had the opportunity to sing for Pope Francis. And then we also have a 3-week study abroad program for middle school students where they can spend a month with students from independent schools from around the world studying in the UK. So both of you have been on some of those trips, and I was hoping that each of you might be able to share one of your memories from one of the trips that you took with Austin Prep.
Sure. Peru was an absolutely amazing trip. One of my favorite memories was actually helping build a wall at this, one of the schools we were repairing. I actually have some pictures that I can share. Here you can see me and one of my friends stomping on some adobe to help build one of the walls for the school. And then this next photo, you can see me and my friend Mclaughlin bringing up scaffolding for one of the walls at that school. And you know, overall, that trip blew my mind really, but my friends there really made it an amazing time. And the experiences we've had were truly amazing. Here you can see us all posing for a photo at the school entrance. And then one of the other great experiences was hiking Machu Picchu, and you can see the ruins in the background there. Yeah.
Awesome. That was a really great trip, Pedro. Thanks for sharing those memories. It definitely brought back some fun memories from back when we went in 2016. So that's really cool. Matthew, do you have a story to share?
Yeah, one of the memories that comes to mind was when I was in Ecuador. We were in a town called Otavalo, visiting the largest indigenous market in South America. Just after we finished our adventures in the market, we were waiting for the bus in this historic plaza, and I was trying to play this little flute I had just bought earlier, and this large group of small kids came up to me and started spraying me with water guns and this toy they have down there where it's this kind of can of spray foam. It kind of looks like silly string, but it's kind of like bubbles and foam. And they saw that I had purchased one on the side of my backpack, so I think they were challenging me to a little bit of a water gun fight or something of the sort, and they all started spraying me with this. So I started running around, and they started chasing me, trying to retaliate a little bit by spraying them with some of the foam. And everyone in the plaza, like all of their parents, the grandparents, everyone who's on the trip with us, we all just laughing and filming it and having a good time. There's a picture, I believe, on the Austin Prep website or some kind of publication of this, but unfortunately I couldn't find that picture, but I have some more fun pictures later on in the presentation.
Awesome. Yeah, no, definitely looking forward to seeing some of your photos, Matt. Yeah, so when we put a trip together for Austin Prep, we start planning out these trips a year to 18 months in advance. And it's awesome to have faculty involved in the planning, but what is really incredible is when students, like both of you, are involved in making proposals, researching destinations. I think that in part is what brought Austin Prep back to Peru for back-to-back years because of that great experience that Pedro's group had when they went in 2016. So we try and make that process as we explore different destinations a pretty interactive one. And we have conversations about sort of how a different trip will advance the mission of Austin Prep and how it can animate our core values of Veritas, Unitas, and Caritas. And so, you know, really what we look for with the students, with faculty, as we're exploring different vendors and options for trips, are experiences that aren't just transactional, but ones that are transformational. And I think, you know, the stories that both of you are going to share with us today really speak to that transformation that can happen through travel. I think, you know, a lot of times vacations or trips can be transactional, right? We pay for an admission ticket or a hotel room, and then we return, we get to go into the museum or spend a night, you know, have a place to put our heads down. But these transformational trips are really where students can grow in the process. And it's incredible to think how both of you have really grown through travel and to connect back with you again today.
Michael, you mentioned how Austin Prep students have had the opportunity to explore quite a variety of places and have experiences like the typical a traveler might not encounter on their own. Could you speak a little bit more about how students make connections to the wider world?
Yeah, absolutely. Recently I wrote a book review for Middle Web on global competency, or the idea of global competency. And I think that the travel program at Austin Prep really speaks to that. It talks about 21st century skills and how much we all are connected in this 21st century world, right? We can hop on a plane and we can be somewhere else in the world in just a couple of hours. And certainly with the internet and of course, all of our time on Zoom throughout 2020, we really have been able to be increasingly interconnected, as a people. In thinking about student travel in particular, that idea of global competency is the idea of getting to not just go and see a whole bunch of places, but to interact with people, to have conversations with people, to really get to know people on a personal level. And that's where, on some of these trips that I've been privileged to lead and which both of you have been able to go on, one of the hallmarks of those trips is trying to stay in one place for an extended period of time where you can really get to know the community that we're traveling to, and to hopefully make some sort of an impact. And certainly the destination is impactful on students as well, to be able to step outside of one's comfort zone and step outside of the Northeast and get to experience another part of the world and get to meet people from that other part of the world. And so I think, through the travel program, one of the great souvenirs that travelers get to bring back are some tales from the trail. But I think they also bring back to campus a new perspective, and they're able to share that with their classmates in conversations in the dining hall, in classes with teachers. And so I think that these trips and their impact, linger far beyond, the week that we might be away. And I think they really come back onto campus here on Willow Street. So in thinking about that, what were some of the elements of your itineraries and experiences from your trips that really stood out for you and that, sort of you brought back to campus?
Well, when we visited Ecuador for the homestay section of our trip, we stayed in a cooperative village in the mountains and the cloud forests of Ecuador, and it was called Yanguilla. There we were able to do like a lot of different forms of community service, so that was really fun. Some of the ones that I remember are, one day we worked in a jam factory and we were peeling lima beans, I believe they were, so they could kind of make some sort of paste out of it. And then later that day we went to the organic garden and we were moving the composted soil to new plots of the garden so they could plant new vegetables and fruits to turn into food and then sell in the local market that they had in the village. And then the next day, we were working on clearing and restoring some of the footpaths around the village by clearing the overgrowth and the leaves that were on the ground. And then unfortunately, I wasn't feeling well on the last day, but the group on the trip got a super cool opportunity to help restore some ancient Incan trails that passed through the village. And I have some pictures of that I can share, or will attempt to share. So that is what the cloud forest looked like. Sorry, it won't let me switch the picture, so I might have to do that in a second. Okay, let's see. This is what the cheese factory looked like. So they're currently processing the milk into cheese. And then I should have one more picture that shows the final product. And then when it was all done, That is what the cheese looked like, all packaged up and ready for sale in the market.
Awesome. Thank you so much for bringing us with you on your trip a little bit there. Let's go over to Pedro.
Yeah, so I think something that really stuck with me from that trip is, I mentioned how we visited all these amazing places and had these experiences, did all these good works. But I think what stuck with me the most was that it was the first time that, my eyes were truly open to kind of the inequity of the world. I'm the first person in my family to be born in the USA. And although my family was certainly well off now, there were times growing up when we were rather poor. My parents had to fight, endure, and sacrifice for everything that we have. And I didn't quite understand that back in the day, but the trip to Peru forced me to realize that life is really unfair for a lot of people in the world. My homestay was like really amazing. And here, I'm going to share some photos with you. Here you can see some photos of me, Mike Flynn, and Eric Kim with our host family. And they were absolutely incredible, and they truly made us feel like part of their family. We had every meal with them and spent many hours talking and playing Uno. Playing might be an exaggeration since we were consistently outplayed by our little host sister. And then I skip the next photo. This is a view from the room that we stayed in. And then down here in the lower right side, that's the compound. That was our home. But the fact remains that when we left Peru and returned home, I was met with the absolute shock that my room contained more stuff, more things than my host family's entire house. And, especially walking through Stop and Shop for the first time, it was kind of a sensory overload because I went from having whatever my host family could grow or buy from local markets to being able to choose 70 different types of cereal. And I realized how privileged we are and how materialistic and in many ways ungrateful for all the opportunities that we are. My host brother was soon going off to work in the mines with his father, and here I am at a private Catholic prep school with the privilege of being able to pursue whatever I wanted. These are all things that I thought I might have appreciated had I not gone on the service trip, but I wouldn't have had such a visceral reaction to it as I did, and it wouldn't have struck me as much as it has.
Wow, Pedro. I know at Dartmouth, you've been sort of continuing, or rather, the trip and experience has shaped some of the activities you've been involved with at Dartmouth, and certainly your program of study. Could you talk a little bit about that? I mean, here you are, senior year at Dartmouth. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And to think that sort of the role that this trip helped to play in the trajectory of your college life and about to launch into your professional life. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Of course, yeah. So before the trip, I actually kind of suspected that I wanted to go into medicine and work in low-income communities. There's some family history behind that. But that trip and the lessons I took from it certainly cemented the plans that I had to pursue a future in promoting global health equity. Going into Dartmouth, I was accepted into the Great Issues Scholars Program, where we explored a number of issues affecting our world. And then the year after, I was actually accepted as a Global Health Fellow, which allowed me to attend talks from a number of different experts in the field of global health. Through connections I made through that program, I was actually able to secure an internship at Build Health International. It's a nonprofit based in Beverly, Massachusetts, that works to build sustainable healthcare infrastructure in low and middle income countries. And there I worked as a researcher for a number of projects. My favorite is actually one where I got the opportunity to go to Zambia with BHI's CEO to conduct stakeholder interviews and gather data to influence our design of the state-of-the-art neonatal intensive care unit that we were going to build at Zambia's equivalent of MGH. And that broadened my worldview even more, and I began to realize how important state policy was in the health landscape. and I played for Dartmouth's Global Health Policy Lab. I was accepted and things came full circle again as my team and I were assigned to help Peru's Ministry of Health on their national telehealth policy. And then more recently, Peru came back into my life as BHI invited me back to work for them full time, and I was focused on a number of projects concerning medical oxygen access in Peru. Yeah.
That is simply amazing. I think that's the only word that that I can use to describe that. I mean, what an amazing story to think about the different experiences you've been able to have at Dartmouth, and wow, like how you are poised for what's, you know, post commencement next spring is absolutely amazing. So congratulations on all of the wonderful work you've been doing over the last 3.5 years. And, you know, wow, if that's what you did already in undergrad, I cannot wait to see what's next in store for Pedro. I mean, this is just so cool. Amazing. And Matt, you are only, you know, a couple of months out of Austin Prep, starting your freshman year. Could you talk about, you know, some of your memories from the trip in terms of, you know, some of your takeaways and, you know, how it contributed to things like, you know, student life and, you know, really getting like this sort of real world kind of education, and how that has continued to shape your perspective?
So yeah, I've talked a lot about the community service aspect of the trip, so I guess I'll focus on the value of Unitas and the community building among my peers. So going into the trip, I really only knew 4 other, so at the time I was a sophomore, and there were only 4 other sophomores on the trip, and those were the only people I actually knew. So I was a little bit nervous because the rest were all upperclassmen and I didn't really know them. But through all the experiences, we were able to become super close. And one that comes to mind is when we were traveling from Panama City to the San Blas Islands, we had to drive over these mountains, and the roads were very windy. There were cliffs on both sides. Some of the parts had been like eroded and chunks of the road had fallen out. So they were very pretty, but also very scary because one little slip and you're off the road. But our drivers, we got into these small little 4-wheelers there was 5 of us plus the chaperone in the car. And these men driving the cars were very comfortable with these roads because they take the trip about every day. So they were going around 50 miles per hour, blasting some fun Spanish music, and all of us in the car were just laughing and screaming, and we couldn't contain ourselves because it was a very crazy journey, but it was super fun. And by the end of it, we all became super close and had many stories to share about our rides when we arrived at the port. And Michael, you've been traveling for the past decade as a trip leader and a travel writer. Could you share a tale from the trail from some of the trips you've been able to lead with Austin Prep?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, it has been, it's been really fun getting to travel. I had never left the country until 2008. So I was teaching in Mississippi, and one of my students came to me, and right, the best ideas come from your students. That is one of the things I definitely have learned and have appreciated over the last 15 years as a teacher and an administrator. But this student came to me and said, you know, Mr. McLaughlin, this art that we're learning about in your history class is really cool. Do you think we could go see it? And I was like, well, sure. Well, like, which art are we talking about? And they said, oh, we like, let's go to Italy and, you know, see, Da Vinci in situ and see Michelangelo and, you know, see the Sistine Chapel. Wow, that would be a really cool idea. And that's what got me on the track of educational travel. It was because my student, Danny, came to me and said, Mr. McLaughlin, can we make this happen? And, you know, when I arrived at Austin, got to work with a number of different teachers on developing some different trips. One of the ones that is most memorable for me was going to Australia and New Zealand with Miss Philodoro. So I have a couple of photos from that to share. Here we go. So this photo here was on one of our days in New Zealand. And sort of after getting to do some of the touristic things around New Zealand, which was necessary after a very long flight, and New Zealand is the adventure capital of the world. So we needed to do some of those, really adventurous stuff with just like slingshotting and a luge race down one of the mountains, which was really fun and safe. It was very safe. We then had the opportunity, like I was talking about earlier, to get to meet people and spend some time with them. And so in this particular photo, we're on the edge of some traditional tribal lands of a Maori people. And our guide, who was with us for the entire day, greeted us at the edge of her ancestral lands and talked to us, looked us in the eye face to face in sort of this very traditional way. And then she welcomed us and came onto the bus with us, and as we drove through the lands, she told us the story of her people, and talked specifically about this village called Murupara, and how sort of just the history has evolved over the last 50 years. The community has seen a major shift in the sense that it has become a very impoverished city or village. And so she talked to us about that and about the work that she and her family are doing to change that story. And so she actually brought us to the school, and we got to interact with teachers and high school students, and they taught us how to do the haka. And so we had a whole hour lesson where we were learning the Maori words and the movements that went with the haka. I actually have a video clip of that.
Okay. Kia mau hei.
Kia mau
Hei. Tore, whao. Kamate, kamate, ka ora, ka ora. Kamate, kamate, ka ora, ka ora. Tēnei te tangata. Wahari, hori nāna itikima. Whakawhiti tērā. Upane, upane. Upane, upane. Whiti tērā. Hukana!
In that experience, it was, the cool thing about it was that we went to school. We got to see where other kids were learning, and and ask them, tell us about the subjects that you're learning. And in those conversations, students were finding, wow, we have an awful lot in common with each other. And getting to make connections with kids from around the world was really cool. And of course, right, meeting kids from other schools on our tour throughout that entire journey was also neat. Throughout the rest of the afternoon, we spent time with our guide's family, and they cooked us this absolute feast. It was called a hungy dinner, and New Zealand has some amazing geothermals, and the food was cooked in the ground with hot stones, and when that feast came out, it was just massive, like sweetbreads and chicken and all of these different vegetables. And we're able to break bread with our hosts and with our fellow travelers, and really get to enjoy each other's presence, each other's company, and have some really great conversation. And for me, I think that was like a real highlight. I have just a couple more, because just so many stories, but I promise I'll be briefer on these other two. So this was from our middle school trip in 2018. And so we went to Portsmouth Harbor as part of our 3-week tour of the UK. And so the neat thing about the middle school trip for those younger students is that they're able to stay on the campus of a British boarding school for practically an entire month. And their classmates, right, they have their group of Austin Prep students, but then their other classmates in the program are from independent schools around the world. So a couple from the US and one from Australia, but a number of the schools that are a part of the program are from Peru, Argentina, and Brazil. And so getting to not just experience British culture, as tourists, but getting to, play a soccer game or a volleyball game or have a meal with some of the other students and teachers who are part of the ISCA program was really great. And so on this day, we got to tour Portsmouth Harbor and see from the water Admiral Nelson's ship, the HMS Victory, which was his flagship at the Battle of Trafalgar, fought 215 years ago today, the day that we're recording on October 21st. And then this last photo, the next time you come to campus, you'll see this one as soon as you walk in. At Christmas time, this was the last trip that we did before COVID. The choir got to travel to Rome. And on New Year's Eve, we were positioned right across from the Nativity Creche in St. Peter's Square. And the Pope was inside St. Peter's celebrating the Te Deum. And then, when that prayer concluded, all of a sudden we heard the Swiss Guard, marching across the square. And then this figure in white silk, Pope Francis, could be seen. And everybody shouting, Pope Francis, Papa Francesco. And he went over to bless the Nativity Creche. And then I was with Mr. Williams, our choir director, and we looked at each other, and all of a sudden he started cueing the choir to begin to sing one of the Christmas songs that they had prepared, because they were going to be singing a concert at the Basilica of St. Ignatius on New Year's Day. And so they started singing, and the Pope, he just perked up and he turned around and made a beeline to the Austin Prep choir, because there they were with their red robes, and was able to shake their hands, and we could see him. And that, I wish that I had put my phone down. I was trying to capture that photo and kind of forgetting the Pope is probably one of the most photographed people. Of course, he would have had a photographer who caught this photo, but there he is with Miss P's daughter, Emerson. And then as he made the way down the line, he was able to shake the hands of many other members of the choir. And that was, so awesome. And I cannot wait until we get to travel again, because these stories are just so much fun. And, to have been a part of them is really been a great privilege. But in thinking about, both of you, we've talked, about a lot of how your travels have connected to sort of some wonderful insights both of you have had, and your journeys as students, and Pedro about to launch into your professional life once your studies at Dartmouth conclude. What about some of the sort of sights and sounds and tastes that you enjoyed through your travels? Are there any, ones that are, coming to mind that you want to share a little bit about?
For sure. I think you mentioned earlier how you wish you hadn't taken photos while you were experiencing that. I think some of the best memories I have were ones that I actually didn't have a camera on at all, and fortunately that means I can't show you them. But I guess the first thing that comes to mind is even riding the bus to and from the places that we were going. I have this one specific memory of we ended up having to split into two buses, and the group I was in started playing charades with the bus behind us through the window, and it was just so much fun being able to connect and do that kind of stuff with our group. That bus was actually bringing us to a different town where we got to see this amazing museum, and it had so much historical Peruvian history, and we got to see all these mummies and Inca like artifacts. It was incredible. In that same town, we also took a salsa lesson. And actually, it kind of stuck with that, and I do some dancing with the Dartmouth Tango Society and a little bit of salsa every now and then.
Beautiful.
Yeah, we got to eat ceviche, like from one of the markets, and I think that stuck with me as my favorite meal. And especially the fact that the corn was absolutely massive there. Each kernel was about the size of your thumb, and it was delicious. Yeah, the entire trip was really incredible, and it was mostly those experiences in the day-to-day that really stuck with me.
Yeah, that's neat. I agree with you about sort of taking that time to put down the camera and be in the moment. And it's, yeah, so telling, right? And how impactful that those moments were, that you could just be with other Austin Prep students, and with our guides and our host families in Peru as well. So that's tremendous insight for sure. Matthew, how about you?
Yeah, so similar to Pedro, a lot of the best memories I had was when we didn't have any cameras, and thankfully when I went to Panama, we actually weren't allowed to bring our phones. We were only allowed to bring like big cameras. So when we were doing a lot of the activities, we couldn't actually bring those. So I have a lot that come to mind, but a few is we actually got to see the Panama Canal, which was super cool. Unfortunately, when we were there, we didn't get to see a boat go through, but we did still get to take a tour of the facility and understand how it works. So that was super cool. And then also in Panama, when we went to the islands, we stayed on the place we stayed was this super small island that was probably only 100 yards wide on both sides, so you could see the other end of the island while you're staying on it. And so that was a super cool place. And then while we were there, we actually got to watch this reenactment of the local tribe there. They were reenacting their war for independence against the Spanish conquistadors. So that was very cool. And then also, when I visited Ecuador, I actually got to go to the equator and stand in 2 different hemispheres at once. So that was pretty cool. It was actually it was in this, I believe it was a national park, and it was surrounded by these beautiful mountains. And it was this thick, long yellow line running through the ground. And that's what signified the equator. And then the last thing that comes to mind is when we were in Panama City, we got to see the historic district of Panama City, and that was probably some of the most beautiful architecture I have ever seen in my life. And the food there was incredible.
That's amazing. What a list of memories, Matthew. That's fantastic.
Michael, do you think you could share a bit more about how other faculty travels have impacted the Austin experience?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. I think, certainly we have a number of faculty who get to go on these trips with our students as well. And I think that's a really valuable and important part of being a faculty member at Austin Prep, is getting to go on some of these amazing journeys with students. And it's not just the time, I think, that you are on the trip with them, but it's that whole period leading up to the trip and getting to know the students and get the students prepared. And, along the way, I feel like, some of the guard goes down a little bit, and, just the personal connections that are able to be formed over a meal and a laugh are amazing. And then, to go on that same journey together. And, as I think about some of the different faculty members over the years who have participated in some of these trips, like Miss Bishop, for example, she was, doing the work alongside the students, moving things around, clearing some of the brush, going on the different walks, visiting everybody in the different homestays, and getting to have those kinds of personal conversations like you all were getting and experiencing. So I think that's one way. And I think, certainly it contributes to that great rapport that faculty and students are able to enjoy on campus. Another way has been through professional development. So Dr. Hickey began a program at Austin Prep called the Summer Sabbatical Program. And so it's a professional development grant for faculty members. And I helped to oversee that process with him and, help the teachers to plan and think about different journeys that they can take and how they'll bring those journeys back to campus. But each year we have between 3 or 4, maybe 5 faculty who will get to participate in one of these really unique experiences. So for example, Mr. Stone traveled to Italy, and for a couple of weeks, he participated in an archaeological dig. And it was at the same site where he had done his Fulbright, a couple decades back. Miss Verasso, we were able to have her participate in the Greek Isles cruise that some of our students took with Mrs. Sherry. And then Miss Verasso came back and she totally reimagined how we teach about Greek history, ancient Greece with Sparta and Athens to our 6th graders. So it totally reinvented her curricula. And then Miss Choate, Miss Grace, as some of you know her, she was one of our very first people to receive the summer sabbatical. And she spent a couple of weeks at the Globe in London and got to study Shakespeare from people who were acting Shakespeare's words on the Globe stage every day. And then she's brought that back to campus. And, if you're fortunate enough to be in her junior Shakespeare class, one of the electives that she teaches a number of electives now. That's an amazing class that is a result of that journey. And then just one more, Dr. Venegas. He also went to the UK last summer, and he got to go in the laboratories where Crick and Watson were exploring DNA. And then he got to interact with British scientists in the up-and-coming field of bioinformatics. And so in thinking about some of the things that are happening on the 4th floor of the academic building here, he's now has a network of top flight British scientists that he did summer coursework with that are now getting to interact with him and his students on Willow Street. So, it's certainly impactful for faculty, but what's amazing, I think, about the Austin Prep faculty is they think about how can I apply this to my students and, enhance their experience while they're at Austin Prep. So, yeah, oh, thank you.
That's awesome. What's next for Austin Prep?
So we had a couple of trips planned for earlier in 2020, like probably many of your plans. Those had to sort of go by the wayside. For us, they're just on hold, on postponement until we're able to run them again. So one of the trips that was planned was for April break. So we were doing another service trip, but this time we looked to do a domestic one instead of going internationally. And so this one was to the American Southwest. So students would have been spending a week interacting with the people of the Navajo and Hopi nations in Arizona. And they would have been engaging in service with those communities and also doing some partnership work with the national parks. So in addition to seeing some of the national parks in the Southwest, they were going to do some work within the parks in the Park Service. And then this past summer, we were supposed to have our 3rd cohort of Austin Prep middle school students travel to the UK for their 3-week program, but that has been postponed until next summer. So fingers crossed on a vaccine and an easement on travel restrictions and the like. And sort of beyond that, right now, the focus has just been bringing everybody back to campus safely and getting to interact with each other here on campus. In many ways, campus has felt like a destination from being in our homes for the last 6 months. So that's been, the primary focus right now. But one day we'll get to travel again. And, certainly as part of that, students and faculty are going to be, very much involved in that conversation. And I think looking at travel at Austin Prep long-term, we really have had some incredible destinations. So I think we're going to continue to look, to maintain that program and grow it further. I think we're going to continue to be intentional about the kinds of trips we select, ones that are more about transformation or have the capacity for transformation as opposed to something that's just transactional. And I think we want to make these trips and experiences available to more students. There are certainly a number of students who participate or are able to go, and so we offer them at different times of year. So I want to be thoughtful about that. And we've been able to offer financial support to students, but I'd like to see that opportunity, be expanded for more students. So I think those are things that we'll be thinking about strategically as we plan for the future. So what's next for both of you? What's on the docket for the rest of the semester or maybe beyond?
So as of right now, I'm planning on continuing my studies here at the University of Vermont and completing all 4 years of college here. And hopefully by my junior year, when we find a vaccine and are able to travel again, I hope to study abroad either somewhere in Southern Africa or in South America or both even. Because for my major, it's most likely that I'll actually have to study abroad for a year instead of just a semester. And I'm currently in this club here called Animal Rescue Club, where we go to local shelters and work with the animals there and help take care of them. And then I also plan on getting really involved with community service projects here at the University of Vermont and in the greater Burlington community.
That's awesome. How about you, Pedro?
Yeah, I'll be graduating in June of next year. And then after I graduate, I'm probably going to be doing some research, working with BHI, and yeah, just getting some more experience before applying to med school in the following application cycle.
Well, excellent. Good luck with your med school applications, and wish you certainly an incredible rest of your senior year of college. Congratulations. And thank you, both of you. This has been a really fun afternoon getting to think back on some of the really cool trips that Austin Prep has been able to go on. But the best thing has been really just getting to talk with both of you. For Matthew, it's only been a couple months since I got to see you in person. And Pedro, it's been a little bit longer, but always awesome to be able to connect with alums and think back to your time at Austin Prep and the role that this school had in your journey. So, please keep in touch, and thank you, both of you, for participating as part of this webinar series. I really appreciate it.
Yes, I second that. Thank you so much for sharing your global educational experiences with us. We are very fortunate here at Austin Prep that we're able to have these opportunities to enrich the student journeys and the faculty journeys through global travel. So in closing, I want to invite all of you in our audience to continue to follow these journeys of Austin Prep through our website, which is austinprep.org, and then also through our social media pages. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So thank you again, Michael and Matthew and Pedro, and thank you to our audience. We really appreciate having you here with us for this short time. Take care. Be well, everyone.
Bye.